A woman carried a child for 3 years only to give birth to a giant baby larger than herself. Though a monster in the eyes of others, as a mother does not want to leave she child. Taking advantage of the absence of others, the couple secretly brought the child home to raise him. However, the child grew quickly and was able to stand and walk before he was even a month old. To keep him hidden, the father designated a yellow zone in the house where Cootie could only move within. 10 years flew by, and Cootie had grown into an adult. The cramped space could no longer contain his massive size, but his parents still insisted he stay in the yellow area. As a result, he shattered the walls. The parents then realized the severity of the situation and had no choice but to tear down the house overnight, rebuilding it as a single-story structure proportionate to Cootie's height. The house was quickly reconstructed. Cootie no longer had to duck his head when entering, and the 5-meter-long bed thrilled him. Even though the room was now very comfortable, Cootie still yearned for life outside. In the dead of night, while his parents were asleep, he sneaked out. To avoid detection, he covered himself in leaves. Seeing a group of people on the grass, he was filled with envy. But the next second, Felix staggered towards him, apparently heading to the bathroom. Cootie backed away in fear, and Felix, startled, thought he was hallucinating from drinking too much. Felix moved forward to continue, causing Cootie to step back again, half sobered by the shock. Felix moved closer to investigate. Seeing the situation worsen, Cootie quickly turned and ran. Felix screamed in fright, but his companions thought he was spouting nonsense. Cootie thought the incident would pass, but the next day, those people actually found him.
Hey! Hey, bro, I see you. Just come out.
Hey, what's up?
Seeing they meant no harm, Cootie brought them home as guests and began to show off his strength. He usually exercised alone, but now with an audience, he seemed even more enthusiastic. To give Cootie a taste of the outside world, the guys took him on a wild car ride, even racing with others. With his towering figure, Cootie became the star of the show. After the party, they brought Cootie in for a burger. A beautiful cashier caught his eye, and she seemed to fall for him at first sight, even showing him the design on her t-shirt. The two quickly fell in love, but the significant height difference soon caused them trouble in daily life. The 5-meter-tall giant was dating a 6-meter-tall girl. Every time he returned home, Flora had to sprint 100 meters just to jump into his arms, and she was startled the first time she saw Cootie's pants. At their first meeting, Cootie was attracted by the fair and beautiful Flora and stared at her for a long time, unable to snap out of it. Although he didn't like burgers, eating them until he felt sick, he kept going to the burger joint to see Flora. Flora seemed to notice his intentions, drawing a heart on the receipt each time in response. However, with no job, Cootie's spending money quickly ran out. He went to his parents for help, but they were still angry about his sneaking out, making it unlikely they would give him more money. To earn money for burgers, Cootie took a modeling job. Though it looked tiring, for his burgers and the girl in his heart, Cootie still persevered. Finally, Flora was moved by Cootie's sincerity. As soon as Cootie walked into the store, Flora came up to him and expressed her feelings. Knowing Cootie disliked burgers, she took him to a Chinese restaurant where they had fried rice and cold dishes. Cootie ate 20 bowls just to fill his stomach. After eating and drinking their fill, Flora took Cootie to the beach. The area was filled with containers, and to liven up the atmosphere, Flora drummed on them like they were a drum set. Cootie had never heard such pleasant sounds and was instantly delighted. Flora was born with the speed of light, so she was misdiagnosed with congenital epilepsy. To her, it seemed like her parents were frozen, as if time stood still before her, because she wasn't on the same frequency as her parents. Communication was impossible, so Flora had to write her thoughts on sticky notes, and her parents would respond on a small blackboard. However, even a simple greeting took a long time for Flora, who waited until after a nap for her mother to finish writing. This way of communication was very inconvenient. Flora longed to communicate with her parents like normal people. She finally came up with a feasible solution: have her parents repeat a letter 20 times, and she could slow down her hearing and speaking speed based on theirs. Eventually, Flora slowed her speech by 20 times. Her parents finally heard her voice and joyfully embraced her. 10 years passed in a blink of an eye, and Flora had grown into an adult. In her view, it wasn't that she was too fast, but that everyone around her was too slow. So at work, No one could see what she was doing. She could easily complete tasks that would normally require 5 people. Even if the cash register had a long line, she could finish in just 5 seconds. Seeing her outstanding performance, her boss happily doubled her salary. Cootie was also deeply attracted by her speed, and these two special individuals quickly came together. On Valentine's Day night, the two had their second date. Cootie sprayed himself full of cologne, and perhaps because of his large size, he used up half of his father's bottle of cologne. While he and Flora were immersed in their joyful bliss, a sudden text from a friend interrupted them. It turned out that Scat was refused treatment at the hospital due to an injury and eventually died from an infected wound. Their friends were protesting the hospital's inhumane behavior. Jones believed Scat's death was no accident. The hospital refused to treat the poor to make money, which led to the worsening of Scat's wound. He argued that the hospital should be held accountable. As he spoke, a giant black cloak unfolded behind him, instantly transporting people to another dimension. Here, he vividly depicted how capitalists exploit the common people, but their protests were met with suppression. The police kept throwing tear gas canisters at them. Luckily, with Flora present, she quickly threw them back. Cootie could no longer stand it and joined the protest. Unexpectedly, he was knocked down by a mech police officer and tightly bound with iron chains. Unable to move, this 5-meter-tall giant was bullied by a group of much smaller thugs. Cootie accidentally bumped into someone, and that person angrily demanded an apology. Cootie thought that patting the other person's head was a gesture of friendliness. Unexpectedly, this action made the person even angrier. He leaped up and punched Cootie hard in the face. Several of his underlings quickly surrounded Cootie, but Cootie wasn't hurt at all. It just felt like a facial massage. Cootie, unable to tolerate it any longer, forcefully pushed them away. This scene was witnessed by Hero, a mecha cop. In order to establish himself as a hero in the eyes of the citizens, Cootie naturally became his target. As a cop, Hero didn't eradicate evil and promote good. Instead, he often helped the rich in the slums and suppressed the poor. Here, all institutions served only the wealthy, and the poor didn't even have the right to see a doctor. Scat had a minor injury but was refused treatment because he hadn't paid insurance.
Do you have insurance? Sorry, Crown only takes people with insurance unless it's life-threatening.
What? How you know it's not life-threatening?
The security guards, regardless of whether he was in a life-threatening situation, forcibly kicked him out. In the end, he bled out and died on the ground. This incident made the citizens very angry, and they took to the streets to protest, watching helplessly as their friend passed away. Cootie was also displeased by this, and his anger gave Hero the opportunity to act. Hero used chains to bind Cootie tightly and dragged him through the streets. This incident quickly sparked discussions among experts. One expert believed that Cootie was innocent and shouldn't be treated so harshly, but another person argued that Hero was the people's hero, and everything he did was legal and compliant. Since there wasn't a big enough prison, Cootie was placed under house arrest with an ankle monitor. As time went by, people had more and more opinions about Cootie.
The things he did in my dream.
He could rip my body straight in half.
And someone even sent a comic mocking him as a thug. This infuriated Cootie, and he tore the comic to shreds. To help him prove himself, his parents decided to fight violence with violence. His father took him to a room and rhythmically tapped the wall a few times, revealing a box full of weapons. It turned out his parents had anticipated this day and prepared weapons for him in advance. His father even custom-made a wristband for him. With these weapons, Cootie immediately felt more confident and decided to confront Hero and seek justice. Bear woke up to find himself turned into a toy. The curtains, which he could easily open before, now looked like towering trees. Helplessly, he drove his toy car to work, with a microphone on top as a horn. The whole neighborhood was filled with a bizarre atmosphere, as if everyone had been shrunk. What was going on? Bear was full of confusion. They believed that someone must have tampered with things to cause this. Bear also seemed to realize this. He often liked to speak up for the lower-class citizens, which touched the interests of the upper class, so retaliation was inevitable. Now, only by uniting could they defeat their opponent. They quickly found Cootie and Flora, and Cootie also wanted to seek justice from these people. They decided to use their talents and teach the power plant, which often arbitrarily cut off their electricity, a lesson. But Bear said they needed to form a band first. Cootie wondered how Bear could think about forming a band at a time like this. Unexpectedly, Flora agreed, which made Cootie instantly jealous. After discussing their plan, they went to the power plant to sabotage the power facilities. With a loud bang, the power plant's billing system was destroyed, and the surveillance system started playing cartoons. The two security guards were dumbfounded and even moved to tears. Meanwhile, Cootie thought their plan was flawless and was having a party at home to celebrate. But the next second, the room started shaking. It turned out that the mecha cop was launching an attack on them. Luckily, their parents had dug an escape tunnel in advance, through which they could escape without any problems. Felix put Bear and the others in a backpack and quickly led them into the tunnel, but Cootie was too big to fit. Flora couldn't bear to leave him behind and refused to leave without him. A 5-meter-tall giant found love with a 6-meter-tall girl. Despite their vast difference in height, they appeared deeply in love. They thought they could be happy forever, but Cootie was treated like a monster by others. The police tried every way to capture him and throw him in jail. Luckily, his mother arrived just in time, saving him from certain capture. While Cootie was feeling hopeless, someone gestured for him to come over. With nowhere else to escape, Cootie ran towards him without hesitation. As soon as he entered, the person quickly locked the door, trapping Cootie in a metal cage. He believed Cootie was the son of a demon and wanted to use his eyes to save humanity. A group of people then swarmed over Cootie. At the critical moment, Cootie suddenly unleashed a primal force within him, scaring the crowd into a frantic retreat. He thought he was safe, but as soon as he stepped outside, an arrow nearly pierced his heart. Hero attempted a sneak attack but was grabbed by Cootie and slammed to the ground. Filled with rage, Cootie couldn't understand why he was treated this way just because of his size. Knowing he wasn't a match for Cootie, Hero began to beg for mercy, even promising to cooperate with Cootie in the future. Cootie believed him and began to let his guard down. Unaware it was a ruse, a drone secretly flew behind him, wrapped a rope around his neck, and pulled him to the ground. Then, using a 2-meter-thick chain, they bound him tightly. Hero immediately summoned a mace and brutally beat Cootie until he could no longer resist. Just as Hero was about to drag Cootie back to jail, Jones suddenly appeared, his cloak unfurling to whisk Hero into another world. Here, Jones showed him the true nature of capitalist exploitation, revealing that Hero was merely a tool used by them. Ultimately, Hero would end up in a cage prepared by the capitalists for him. Hero seemed to have an epiphany. He had always wanted to be a hero in people's hearts, only to realize he had become a pawn of the capitalists. With this realization, his inner world began to collapse. The drone took him wobbling away. When a person loses their faith, they become nothing more than a soulless shell.